makes it easier to bear. You won't regret it.
Basically, the theme is we're celebrating. We just bought the first business in the HVAC group called. Bought that company 3 months ago, and we still haven't gotten together and celebrated really. So eat something, celebrate, have a good time. We're going to discuss the next target. We've actually lined up 2 potential next targets, one of which we already started making offers on. I mean, if you think of it another way, there's different ways to build a business. You can do it one customer at a time, right? So you can find a customer, transact with that customer, and then go find the next customer. Or you can find a business that does that, and whilst the business continues to do that and grow organically, you can grow hyper organically through acquiring subsequent businesses that are on that customer acquisition journey. So it's going from 0 to 100 million pounds in 2.5 years is not something that you necessarily do one customer at a time. To think of it another way, it's actually not really that complicated. There's probably, I want to say, tens of thousands of HVAC businesses in the UK. I'm looking for the subset, 1,000 or so, that generate 5 million pounds in revenue plus, where the owners are of retirement age and are interested in exploring an exit. And I simply need to gather somewhere between 7 and 20 of those under one group umbrella. And then that's it. That's the mission. And then subset to that, put management teams in place that do not destroy value, such that if the company was doing 5 or 10 million in revenue and say 10% earnings, we either maintain that value or increase that value, but heavens forbid not go the other direction. So what I'm looking for is businesses that are profitable, but sustainably profitable, and one where we're not risking the easy destruction of value. So that's why. And the other thing is why revenue, straight up ego. Why do we do anything? Well, one is survival, but assuming you're not in survival mode, it's probably got some taint of ego, right? So I like big numbers. I think they're fun. I think it's more exciting to get up and try to build a 100 million pound group than a 10 million pound group. That's not exciting. We've already done that. If someone has, let's say, 5 million pounds of liquidity that they want to deploy into this private equity asset class. They say, I've got 5 million pounds cash that I want to go and buy businesses with. They have 2 choices. One, they can take the 5 million pounds and go buy businesses with their money alone, or they can partner with banks and lending institutions and say, look, I've got 5 million pounds. If you can give me access to 10 or 15 million of your pounds in the form of debt, we can use your debt with my equity and we can go buy 20 million pounds worth of transaction businesses. And there's a third chapter, a third instrument, which is seller finance. All that means is when you're buying a business, the business owner will probably finance a transaction to a certain degree by taking an IOU. So let's get specific. Let's say a company does 1 million pounds in pre-tax profits on, let's say, 10 million pounds of revenue. And let's say that you happen to value that business at 4.5 million pounds, which would in that case be 4.5x earnings, 4.5 multiple as the earning multiple for the 1 million pound business. You might approach a host of banks who then say, well, if you bring £1 million of equity, your savings from your 5 million pound budget, we'll loan 2.5 million pounds into the transaction. Therefore, there's 3.5 million pounds cash at close. But if the business is worth 4.5 million pounds, where does that £1 million come from? The missing million, that's seller funding, seller finance. That's the owner of the business saying, all right, if you can value my business at £4.5 million, which is 4.5x my £1 million profit, I will accept £3.5 million on day one, and I will do a earnout, which means I perform or the business performs over 2, 3, 4 years to earn the last million, or a deferred consideration, meaning we have just a payment plan over 2, 3, 4 years where I then have a £250,000 a year released to me. Therefore, this business that earns £1 million a year would have to service the £2.5 million bank loan from its profits, as well as service the deferred consideration to the seller. And that's the math that you do when you're deciding on what to value a business at, how much to pay at closing, how long to stretch the earnout period or the deferred consideration period, and it can get really interesting. There's some things you can do.
Are we late?
The dinner is actually 6, so yeah, we're late. It's Yusufa time. It would have been nice to have been on time for the pre-dinner coffee, and we're a little bit behind for that. So we're not late. We're not gonna get any awards. It's a good call. It's a good call. Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate that. That's wise. Very wise of you. I'll delist you. Don't worry. Leave it with me. It's done. All right, mate. See you soon. Cheers. Bye. Bye. Sweet. So Paul's been super busy. We made an offer on the next target, and he's been negotiating with them. He knows sort of the structure that we're looking for, so he's been fully autonomous in trying to set that up. And they've come back and they haven't accepted, but they're kind of accepted. They've pushed back on the terms, but they've pushed back with terms that are not entirely unfavorable. So, promising.
Okay.
Call it a win. So, the business that we just bought had like a crazy thing happen, which is, so they install ventilation units in buildings, industrial buildings, think warehouses, factories, etc. And some of these are like brand new developments. And long story short, this summer there was seagulls, so like the birds that like fly near the water, that chose the roof of one of our projects to land on and lay eggs and start nesting. literal nesting seagulls, okay? And I'm gonna drop an F-bomb, for fuck's sakes. These nesting seagulls cost us at least £500,000. Because what happens is the environmental agency gets involved and says you're not allowed to complete construction because they have to protect the seagulls, and they have to wait till the eggs hatch and the baby seagulls fly away. And so we couldn't get on site for basically 2 months, and that's £500,000 of work gone.
So you can remove the eggs, or what?
You're not allowed to. And I don't want to be politically incorrect or anything, but had someone taken it upon themselves to help these seagulls nest somewhere else without calling the freaking environmental agents, it would have been just fine. But the moment it gets logged, then legally no one can do a thing. You have to protect these seagulls, and they have to nest.
The camera is not.
Did I know in my heart I'm letting you down, letting you down every day. Why do I keep on running?
And here I am 30 years later, less than seagulls. Sorry?
So why in the UK? Like, is it because you lived here for, was it 4 years?
Okay, why the UK? I'm a believer in, I'm not one of these sort of like I'm not these entrepreneurs that think that suffering is like, I don't see value in suffering just for the sake of suffering. I think if you can get from A to B efficiently, get from A to B efficiently. The UK, English is the first language, rule of law, active debt markets, transparency and visibility into corporate enterprises, meaning you can do due diligence that's somewhat robust, and access to human resources. So a class of educated people that can execute. All right, well, those are the ingredients I need. They also have a highly populated, class of businesses. So there's a lot of companies that you can go after. It's all here. Versus Denmark, where, great, I've lived there for 11 years. Love Denmark for a lot of reasons. There's just not as many businesses as the UK. It's a smaller country. There is a language barrier, meaning, well, you're limited to the Danish market in many ways, and you have to sort of leave that market. It's like, what? To expand? Terrible debt markets. Terrible debt markets, at least for an African guy. Terrible debt markets for an African guy, right? So, I need access to capital, and what's the growth opportunity?
Yeah.
So UK, because it makes sense, and it doesn't hurt that I lived in London for 5 years, and we're in London right now. I love this place.
Yeah.
The thing about London is, it's a really cool city if you're willing to spend money, but it's a really harsh city if you're not willing or able to. That way it's a tough place. Walking 6 minutes from the apartment to a hotel called the Mandrake. It's supposed to be a nice hotel. Let's go check it out. Get some breakfast, and then do a little bit of work. Just catch up on some mails. Head back to the apartment. Fly back to Copenhagen. Potentially, you even find yourself borrowing some of these techniques.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is born understanding. I don't think anyone graduates school understanding. There is no such thing. There is simply, what is your belief system? What is your view of the world? Are you a believer or not? Do you believe that you are worthy of owning large, profitable enterprises? Do you believe that you are worthy of expanding, building large enterprises? That's what it starts with. And then you say, I'm a believer. Then you go, great. What is now my strategy? How am I going to execute on this belief? You can start from scratch, or you can look to existing successes and say, well, how do I transact? How do I give the owners of that business what they desire, which is they need a safe place, a safe home for their baby, their child, their business. They want to know that the buyer will take care of their people. They want economic realization for the value that they've created and haven't realized. And they want a credible actor, someone on the other side of the table who can deliver on their promises. Great. You become that person, and you can grow into that person. You can learn to be that person. That's the person that does this thing. No one is born as that person.
You become.
You choose to become that person, then you behave like that person. You start to get the evidence that that person has. You get the results of that person, and then you become that person.
I like that.
It's not that complicated.
No.
Check.
Check.